Hello, I'm Chris, and this video is going to be about sharpening fundamentals. Um, I did a video on how to make a strop, and I did a video on how to use a strop, and I think those are very important to learn first. For today, we're going to be learning how to use a sharpening stone. This is a diamond plate stones, and we're going to be sharpening a single edge blade. So the easiest way to learn how to sharpen is to start with something simple. So a chisel, and if we learn how to use this and sharpen this correctly, then it makes it a little easier when we move on to other types of items to sharpen, such as, say, a knife, because a knife has a curvature. So we're going to start out with a chisel. So for that, well, my recommendation, of course, is a strop. You're going to need a strop. You're going to need some honing compound that I use, Tormek, and that's a 3 micron. And we're going to be working with this Sharpal or Sharpel, and this is a really nice diamond wheatstone or whetstone, but they don't use it wet. So it's a dual grit, and it's got coarse at 325 and extra fine at 1200. There's tons of reviews out there on this, so I figured I'd pick one up because the best way to get to learn how to do this is to start and doing it by hand. So, and the same recommendation, I basically work with, for all of my working tools, anywhere starting at 300 to about 1,000. So this fits right into that same category or same range. So let's go ahead and start with this big old file here, and we're going to learn about the bevel. So this has a single bevel on one side and it's flat on the other. So if we look at it like this, we have, basically one direction. So that's how we're going to work with this. My personal opinion about bevels and angles is what works for the knife, or what works for the cutting blade, or what works for the purpose. These are working blades. So all we're going to do is continue with the edge that it currently has, and we're going to see how we can improve that. So this one does have some striations from the original grind. It's also, if we get a close-up, I'm going to do that with my other camera real quick. You can see that this top edge is very not the best finish. So this is this chisel that we're going to be working with today, and you can see there's a lot of striations in it. This is the 1.5 inch. It's a chrome vanadium. This is Harbor Freight. I think it's a good idea to buy some old chisels or old kitchen knives when you're first starting to help you develop the techniques and the methods. And you can see the rough grinding on the back as well, and that edge, and we'll do a before and after. We can also see how that's going to perform on this piece of oak here. And we're just gonna, it'll cut it, but it's not, fantastic at cutting it. Also, it just wants to tear paper. Not saying we're going to be able to get it to cut paper, but that would be nice, but we're going to give it a try. So if I kind of saw it down, it'll cut the paper, but it's going to need a sawing motion with the way that edge currently is. So let's get started. This is the diamond stone, and this is very flat, and we're going to start with the coarse side, which is 325 grit. And really only when you're reprofiling do you need to use this. If you've got a nice edge or something you're happy with, you wouldn't need to use this side. For just straight up sharpening, you're just going to need to use the fine side. So, but we're going to try and get rid of some of these striations here, and we're going to try and clean up that back a little bit. So for this, we're going to want to hold this flat, just like this, and we're just putting some pressure on this end. I'm not so concerned about back here, but we're just going to put some pressure on this, holding it flat to clean up this backside, and we're just going to go back and forth. The important thing is to hold it flat. So as you can see, it's not completely flat on the back, but we're going to make it as flat as we can get it. We can change direction, so we're making cuts in this direction and then switch to the next direction, and we're going to make cuts in this direction. This is flat, so we're not worried about an angle or holding an angle. So we can go straight up and down. And we're starting to get some of that out of there. You can see in the middle it's low, and we're really only worried about a 1/4 of an inch back or so is all we really need. So we're getting closer to that 1/4 of an inch. I'm using a large chisel so it's easier to see the process, and this is how I recommend anybody who wants to start sharpening to use the cheap chisels, cheap kitchen knives, cheap stuff before you start attacking your favorite collection of knives or anything harder. This is vanadium. It's a type of, I think it's a stainless steel, but it's an inexpensive stainless steel. So we're getting a little bit better there. Let's turn this around. We'll go this direction. We'll change it up so we're going across the other direction, kind of like a crosshatch. So we're making scratches this way, and then we're making scratches this way. And you don't use any type of lubrication at all on these diamond stones. You don't need to. That's why I recommend this over a lot of other things. So it's starting to flatten out. So we've just got one spot here that's still showing the original scratches, and you can, if you feel here, if you could feel that, that's getting much smoother than it is back here where we first started with that, with the milling that they did at the factory. All right, we can go a little bit further. So we're just a few little scratches here, but all we really need is the front leading edge to be as smooth as we're going to get it. So now we're going to move over to this angle. So on this, when you place it down, you're going to find that angle. Now, one thing that's nice to do, or you can do, so you can see what you're getting, is to use a Sharpie. This is always helpful when you're learning, is we're going to take the cutting edge and we're going to go ahead and completely coat that with a Sharpie. And this way, we'll be able to really see if we've got the correct angle as we start to run passes over this. So when we do this, we're going to want to match the angle of this with the stone. So of course this is flat, and when you feel that hit, that is the angle, because this is a single bevel. It only has one. So we're going to try and ride it at this angle right here. And remember, we have the scratches in there from the milling that are just like these on the side, and that's what we're trying to eliminate at this point. So we're going to get that angle. And it doesn't matter if you sharpen forwards or backwards. That there's really no anything that says that one works better than the other. So it makes it just don't worry about that. You do it the way that's most comfortable for you. And then I don't use angle gauges. This comes with an angle gauge, and you can use that, or jigs. And if you're comfortable using jigs, that's fine. But I think it's important to learn how to sharpen without jigs, so that you kind of learn the process. And then also, there's recommendations for angles on different knives for the cutting edges, but those are generalized, and it depends on what blade or knife you're using for what task. And that's far more important, is to sharpen it with the angle that you think is going to work based on recommendations. And then how long working period you get between sharpening and whatnot, that will help you determine, do you need to make that angle a little steeper or a little shallower to get better performance out of it. So we're going to match this angle, and we're just going to run this back and forth on here, see if we're getting the correct angle. Sometimes it's easier to go backwards to start. So if we look at that, we can see that we're only catching the back. So we want to tilt that a little higher, a little pressure right here. And now we're getting the front and the back. So this may not be flat yet. So we're going to go ahead and sort of get our angle. And what's important to hold an angle is to freeze your wrist here. So once you get locked in, we want to get that angle that we want. And then you don't want this, you don't want to move your wrist. You want to keep that this is our jig. So now we can do this. Feel that angle. And see, we're getting pretty good coverage on that now. So it's all about feel. And once you get comfortable that you've got the angle, you can go both directions. You can use, your finger as a guide, but you only want to use that if you touch, you've gone too low, like this direction. You don't want to ride your finger on the diamond stone. It will take the skin off. So I seem to be riding a little too far the back there, or there's... So we're taking off on the front and the back to get this as smooth as we can, and this is on the coarse side. So we're kind of reprofiling this. So we can see now that we've got a bit of a divot across here still that we need to do, so I need to put a little more pressure on this side. Just a little further to go to get that nice all the way across. As you can see, we're moving quite a bit of material, a lot more than if you were just stropping. Got just a small divot left. And this is a big chisel. A knife edge is a lot easier. These single bevels take a lot more effort. And that divot wouldn't even really bother anything in the cutting. So I'm going to use the Sharpie and put a little mark. That's what we're trying to work on. That's all we've got left to bring to this grit. So it may look like a little tiny spot, but trying to get that down, we're bringing everything around it down to meet it. So we are almost there. I'm going to call that good. So we have a nice smooth on this side. We've got that all to the same. We've removed these grind marks. And on the back, we've done the same thing. So that looks pretty good. So now we're going to flip over the stone, the diamond stone. So that was the 325 coarse. And we're coming over to the 1200 fine. So we're going to do the same thing that we did on the coarse side. We're going to start on the back and we're going to try to get that a little smoother. So we're going to lay that flat. Now this is already pretty sharp, but it's just not refined. So be very careful with the tip. And as you're doing this, you're going to feel a change in the resistance. So that is one of two things. One is that it's working, and the other is that your grain and grit is filling. So you want to do, every once in a while, you're going to want to brush this off. And don't get discouraged. Using these big ones, it makes it easier to see and understand. It would take just a minute or two to sharpen that. So this we're starting to get about a 1/4 inch back is getting very smooth. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to work that. So we've got about a 1/4 inch of that has been brought to this 1200. Now the 1200 we're actually sharpening, and you can actually feel a little bit of a burr on the front side. So that shows that when we're removing the material from the bottom here, it's actually curling up on the edge and giving us a burr. That's what we're going to remove when we strop. So let me I'll get a little close-up picture of that so you can kind of see that burr raising, because that's what we're looking for to sharpen. We're going to do a burr. Currently it's curling on this side, and then it's going to curl on the other side. So this is the burr that we're raising with 1200 grit from the back side. All right, so we're going to call that good for now. And we've got that burr on that side. So now we're going to switch over and work on the beveled side to do the same thing. And that burr right now, you feel going this direction. You really don't feel it this way. So this is going to polish this side up to the same standard, the 1200 grit, and it's going to turn that burr and run that burr down in this direction. So we're going to do the same thing as we did on the back side, but we're going to do it on this side with the 1200 grit. You can see that's starting to polish that up. All right, I think that's pretty good. Now that burr has curled over so it's smooth from here. And if you run your finger on this, never into the blade, but this way, you can feel there's a little burr edge on there. Okay, so that's the sharpening. And we're going to now move on to stropping and see how we did with that. So we're going to bring our strop over. And I suggest you watch the video that I did on stropping the proper way to get a better understanding. But we're going to use, so we've gone from 320 to 1200, and then to this is based to 3 micron, which is like a 3000 grit. And for working blades, that's perfect as far as I'm concerned. That's great for kitchen knives. It's great for chisels. It's great for leather cutting tools. This is what I use as a general sharpening, is basically 300, 1000, and then 3000. And with that, I get really good results. This is the compound, and we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did before. We're going to come across here, and this is the rough side that we add the compound to. So this strop has a rough side and the front side. So this is the full grain side, which we don't put compound on, and we have the back, which is the flesh side, and that helps to hold a lot of compound. So you can see this is a very sharp edge here. So we've got plenty of compound on here. So we're going to do the same thing as we did before. We're going to use this compound. When you put it on, you first start, it's white with this compound, and it's going to darken because it's actually taking metal off, but this is much less aggressive than the stone. Matter of fact, I may have too much on here, so we're going to go ahead and remove some of that as we go. And you want to hold this flat. You do not want to gouge. So it's always a good idea to go against the edge so you don't gouge your strop. So we're going side to side, and you can go backwards. You just don't want to push it in because it will cut right into the strop. So we're getting that polish. right there. Taking some of the load off of that. I don't want to get a bunch of compound on the grain side, so I want to be careful not to get too much on there. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but you can actually hear those little grains working. So it's honing and polishing. We're starting to get a really nice edge on there, nice polish to the back. We're very sharp at this point, so be very careful handling the edge. You can see that's starting to shine up. That's what we're looking for. We're really most concerned just with the edge, because that's going to start the cut and the curl. Okay, now let's go from the back, which we're getting a polished edge on that. Let's go to the front. And this one, we're going to make sure that we're running, you know, away from it. We don't want to run into it at all. So we're going to polish up this edge. It's basically just dragging it. Like I said, go watch my video on proper stropping, why we do it, and why we want to learn how to strop before we sharpen. Because if we were to do things improperly here, we could ruin our sharpened edge, roll it over. Because we don't want to do that. That's starting to get pretty much like a nice shine to it. When you hear it doing that, that's when I'm catching the edge here and not this part that we've been working. So hear that? If you raise it just the right level, that sound goes away. That's pretty shiny now. So now we've honed with compound, which is the 3 micron. We're going to clean this up. We want to get as much compound off it as we can. Because now we're going to go to the grain side, and this is our final polishing. So we're going to do the same thing where we do the flat. And that's getting that nice shine to it. Of course, you can go as far as you want, as far as making a shiny blade, but we're really only concerned with the cutting edge. And depending on how deep you're cutting. All right, so that's the back, and now we're going to go and do the front, or the cutting edge. And that's looking so much better than what our original file look like, and we'll pull out. Let's clean that up. Got some alcohol here. Just cleaning the compound and grease and gritty. So be very careful. We have a very sharp blade at the moment. All right, so let's get a close-up of that now with the other camera. And we'll see that the burr is gone. And that working edge is in really good shape there. We'll check the back. You don't feel a burr. Now it's always going to be a little bit rough. It's just microscopic. So you want that. That's the tooth. It helps to bite. And then comparison to what the original edge looked like. Okay, let's check out how this cuts now. Here's that same piece of oak, and it bites the second it touches it. Let's see. I have a piece of paper here. Oh, really? A chisel that cuts paper is a little overkill, in my opinion, but thought we'd try and see how it does with that. And we're cutting basically all the way across the edge. And that is a big thick blade there, that chisel, and we're able to get the edge on it where that cuts paper. Now, of course, you can refine that as much as you'd like to get that as polished and as pretty as you'd like. Well, I hope you found that informational. Thanks for watching today. I do have affiliate links that help support the channel if you are interested in the products I work with. I haven't been paid for them, but if you purchase them through my affiliate links, I will get a small kickback to help the channel keep going. So once again, I know that was a long video, but thanks so much for sticking with it to the end. Have a great day.